The commodity markets have bounced back this week, and Jerry Gidel is going to tell us why we should have caution right here on Connected Farmer, your channel to keep you up to date with the latest trends in agriculture and livestock. So, Jerry, the market has bounced back this week with some declines on Friday, but still, week over week, we got a recovery.
Yes, we did, and actually considered how we slammed things on Monday here because there was some there was some good rains in different spots in Argentina, definitely in Cordoba and parts of Buenos Aires. But interestingly enough, Santa Fe, just on the west side of the Paraná River, there just hasn't had too much. I think that's part of what helped provide a little bit of stability in this market after it got slapped down on Monday, and rightly so. The weather in South America is going to continue to be a major factor in these markets. But I think that kind of the twist that came through here is that each day we got a little bit of overnight purchases from unknown, and then actually we got a named Chinese purchase here today. But we had about 500 and 40,000 tons of beans unknown after 3 or 4 days. And corn, we're up 240,000 since last uh, Thursday's export sales numbers and that. And so I think that gave a little bit of spirit here, along with the ongoing issues in the Black Sea. Another feature over there, the Ukrainians and even the UN continue to kind of point the finger at the Russians here, seeing they couldn't seem to get any inspectors in there to keep the boats moving. Actually, there were some reports here during the month of January that this thing, the number of traffic out of the Black Sea from the Ukraine was the lowest they've had since way back when they started the numbers there back in late July on things on a overall month of tonnage in that. So definitely, some features there about the fact that the world isn't getting that many ships and bushels out of the Black Sea. From there, definitely lots of commentary about the West trying to send in some tanks and other things like that. So this whole thing in the Black Sea looks like it's going to continue to be uh, concerns, and also to some extent here could be a lot more long lasting at this point, unless some other the Russians decide that Putin is their man. And at this point, I haven't seen any indications of that per se going on in that world so far, at least in this whole thing, because they were the aggressor and decided that they needed to do this, and if they're the ones that probably need to decide that it's time to quit. But right now, at least, that hasn't been the case.
Yes, and maybe some concerns come out of the US. The USDA had estimated that 59% of the country will be under drought, but the drought monitor is saying it's 63%.
Yes, the U.S. side of this issue here, we've had some rains definitely in the markets there per se in California, and there has been some shower activity, of course, across the South and maybe in parts of Indiana and Ohio, and that. So things come off the really high levels, but they still have significant amount of the U.S., particularly west of the Missouri River, and particularly in the important areas where wheat is in the western Kansas, western Oklahoma, Colorado. There's been some snows across Nebraska and that, but I think that's definitely a feature out there, and it's going to continue to be a factor. The other thing that kind of popped up, and it's kind of interesting, didn't get a lot of play, was the fact that the warm weather that been around here in the U.S. Also has been around in the Ukraine and Russian areas and that. And to some extent, that supposedly there was reports that the wheat crop over there in the Black Sea had come out of dormancy, and that's an interesting factor in this thing. Uh, to some extent, if the cold snap that comes eventually here isn't too severe, it won't be that big a deal. But boy, we don't need that cold snap we had here in the U.S. Before Christmas come in. That could ding things up over in the Ukraine. And actually, the Ukrainians right now are not very optimistic about their crop sizes for the coming 2023 year. One of the ag ministers over there put out a number of 18 million on wheat. That's down from 25, 27 million that was thrown around here from the USDA for this last year, and that was down like from 40 plus the year before that. And on the excuse me, that was on the corn side. The wheat side was 16 million, and that's down from numbers in the 30s plus 30s on things. So both of those numbers right now, because of the issues of the ongoing territory that's not under their control, and also inputs in that on Ukraine, definitely has reduced their prospects for right now, at least, to harvest that will meet anywhere close to last year.
Now, what's the reasoning behind your caution standpoint?
Well, it's kind of showed us up what was there last week when we kind of a defensive win of the weekend and we busted it back down on Monday. Ongoing moisture in Argentina is really the one that I think so many people are, at least I'll take it back. The important investors, and the important investors are the funds, commodity funds, and that's been one of their linchpins of trying to be in the market or not. I think to some extent, they were defensive last week going into the weekend. They were defensive on Monday, and then turned around and they had to do a little bit of short covering here as the markets kind of picked up a little steam because of those export sales we talked about from the U.S. total and that. And I think that's still going to be a feature in this thing as we go forward. It's a tricky one though, because right now the mental attitude is La Nina's pretty well over with, and everything's going to be back to better weather all the time. But sometimes the forecasts that are out there don't always turn around and come through as the projected at this point. So it's going to still be a choppy type of situation, and that that some of the chart patterns and things like that also create some emotions in this thing. Actually, the corn got back above its 200-day moving average here late in the week, and so that's another technical thing that kind of sets the tone for which way the big investors like to approach a market. From there, wheat though continues to be a very below the 200-day moving average and kind of going sideways here from that point. It's so amazing. We're talking about some very tight world supplies and that for wheat. The one thing that also was probably a positive earlier in the week that popped up here, I forgot to mention in the wheat market, was the fact that there's lots of talk that India was going to go ahead and release some wheat into the domestic markets and that, because things were kind of bubbling, and they didn't get around to doing it until Tuesday or Wednesday. And so but they did go ahead and put out 3 million metric tons into the millers and processors over there in India, and to some extent, India is going to be one of the bigger crops that's coming ahead of us here, since Australia is behind us at this point. And that actually is kind of interesting. Iraq picked up 150,000 tons this last week from, of all places, Argentina. I know, excuse me, Australia. That was what I was mentioning here, and now where the next world crop that's people looking at will be India. Uh, Things seem to be all right over there, but the key feature, like last year, is what things happened here starting mid to late February on through the 1st of April. That's turned things around dramatically last year. And their crop that looked pretty good didn't turn out to be as good as they anticipated, and they had to stop exporting some wheat that they had already committed, which I suspect is probably going to be a very cautionary time this year. World markets don't like people to decide after they've just made a sale that, well, we really can't do that. You might get by with it 1 year, but the next year there's going to be a lot of people deciding not to deal with you if you're. And that's happened with the Chinese. It's happened with the Russians. It's happened now with the Indians last year. It's not one of those things that the world commercial exporters, importers don't like to do. That's not one on there. They make commitments to that, and they assume everybody else is, if it's good or bad for you, that makes no difference. You've got to decide what you're going to do, and once you do it, you do it. You don't turn around and say, "Oh, let's not do that now. I have to change things from there." But that's part of the world that we deal with these days from that standpoint. But it's going to be important to watch very closely here. I think there's still, I think it's part of the reason why beans were down today a little bit going into the weekend. But and you say, well, geez, why didn't corn and wheat? Well, right now the mindset of the world is the rains are going to impact the soybean crops a lot more emotionally here than it will be. Well, wheat's pretty well past everything in South America. The other crop, of course, is corn, and actually, I think one of the year-old stomping grounds there, Rio Grande do Sul, there was lots of comments about the corn market or corn crop down there being a little on the toasty odor, kind of like last year. I wouldn't say it is bad so far, but it's something that the people are going to keep a lot of close contact on as we go forward. So, as always, weather can be an important factor in the commodity markets. It looks like it is right now.
And what about what are you looking at in the first week of February?
Well, I'd have to say that the world is going to be, as I said, watching South America, but they're also going to be trying to get their head together about what the USDA might be talking about. Actually, it's a little faster this month. It's only on February 8th from there. But one of the kind of the long traditions of the USDA, they don't, once they kind of make everything fit into their system in January, they kind of sit back and wait and see what happens. Well, last year some rains improved things in South America. From there, in the U.S., they're not going to change. After all they've adjusted in exports right now, in some ways, I think the export number could actually go up in beans, because right now we're still over 100 million ahead of last year, and we also had another excellent export sales and shipments this last week. Problem is that I don't think the USDA is going to make a lot of those changes until they get into March at this point. But that's anything can happen these days. Some of the long traditions of how the USDA deals with things doesn't always happen the way it has in the past.
All right, sir. Thank you very much.
You bet. You have a good weekend. And we'll be watching the U.S. football conference championships and see who gets to the Super Bowl.